Ma'am, sorry to inform you of this, but according to our information, Bella Hiddleston was reported dead 2 months ago after disappearing in the forest, the secretary said. What? This couldn't be happening. But that's my name, and I'm clearly still alive. This was some sick mistake. I asked them to check again, but they kept saying the same thing. Had I been missing for so long that my family actually thought I'd died? The accident had been pretty crazy, so I was feeling confused. I mean, what had I been doing in a forest in Cambodia in the first place? I tried so hard to remember, but I couldn't recall anything. Luckily, some local villagers had found me in a trapping pit and helped me recover. Otherwise, I would have died. I then asked the people in the embassy to help me call my husband and sister. There had clearly been a big misunderstanding, and I wanted to fix this right away. God, the weight was killing me. The secretary tried, but she said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't reach either of those numbers." This was unbelievable. I was stuck in a foreign country with no ID, no contact with relatives, and I'd been reported dead. But in a flash, I realized that I could borrow someone's phone to reach for my acquaintances via social media. So as soon as the secretary lended me hers, I went straight to my husband's profile. But I was so stunned, I almost dropped the phone when I saw his latest update. He'd just made an announcement that my funeral was taking place the following week. OMG! What was happening? How could this be real? I kept scrolling down his profile and saw my sister had posted an old selfie with him saying, "Ronnie, I know this is a tough time, but I'm always here for you. We'll get through this together." Hang on, what did she mean? Firstly, I wasn't actually dead. Hello? But also, I know my sister used to have feelings for Ronnie. Did she assume that she could just be with him now that she thought I was dead? What a traitor! We were so close. Surely she wouldn't treat me like this. I had to get home and sort this out once and for all. I asked the embassy to help me fly home without informing my family in advance. I wanted to surprise them. Believe it or not, the day I was due to arrive home was the day of my funeral. What a coincidence, right? I went directly to the funeral venue, in disguise, of course. I wore a huge black hat and sunglasses to hide my face and sat way at the back so no one would notice me. There were so many people there. My family, friends, and even my business partners. It was so bizarre. And then I saw Ronnie. He looked exhausted. I just wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm alive! You can be happy again!" But then my sister Kylie appeared and took his arm and whispered something in his ear. I froze. They looked close, too close for comfort. And then I noticed people around me whispering, "Oh, it can't be that bad. He'll get a pretty penny from the insurance company for Bella's death." And then another lady said, "Not just that, but a younger, prettier wife too, by the look of things." I wanted to puke. Ronnie and Kylie were hugging each other now. All of this made me feel like my whole existence was meaningless. Nobody here really cared about me. I couldn't watch my sister and husband for a second longer. I ran out into the street and kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I found a motel to stay at. The next morning, I snuck home after my husband went to work. I needed to pick up some of my stuff and get some money. It was so weird being home. Everything looked the same, but I noticed none of my stuff was lying around anymore. Then I spotted it. A big box in the corner. I ran over to open it, and inside was all my belongings. I was shaking as I picked up the wedding photo that used to be on our nightstand. I mean, I was barely fresh in the grave, and already Ronnie had boxed me up. It was almost like he couldn't wait to kick me out of his life. Ouch! I wanted to get out of there, so I quickly went to our bedroom to get some cash and clothes. That's when I discovered a shocking secret that made me fall onto the floor. As I was taking my clothes out of my cupboard, a strange piece of paper fell out. And guess what? The first line caught my eye was Bella's death plan. It was a sketch showing the path leading to a waterfall and made up evidence along the way. OMG! This was it! I knew that waterfall. It was pretty close to where I had the accident. So, had Ronnie planned this? Was he sick in the head? What had I ever done to him to deserve this? I had to run out of there to clear my head, but something caught my eye at the newsstand. It was Kylie, on the front of the newspaper in an article about how she was going to be running the company in place of our grandfather. There was a photo of Kylie and Ronnie at the inauguration, and look how happy they were. They didn't seem to be upset about my death at all. I wanted to rip the paper up. But wait, why would my grandfather give up his position? He had never mentioned it. He loved his job. This didn't sound right. So I quickly took a taxi to his place to find out what was going on. When I got there, I was so shocked. My heart sank upon seeing him hooked up to medical equipment. Turns out that after he'd heard the news about my death, he'd had a heart attack. When he spotted me by the door, he was so stunned he almost fell off his bed. We hugged and cried, and I told him it had all been a big mistake. Gosh, I was so happy to see him. I could see he was tired, so I told him to rest up and I'd visit again soon. Then on the way out, I spoke to his assistant, Cody. I need a favor. Could you help me prepare a case against Ronnie? But suddenly I heard footsteps coming towards me.
Bella? Is that you?
I turned around, and it was Ronnie. I didn't even have time to think clearly before he rushed in to hug me tightly. I could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks, and he seemed genuinely shell-shocked to see me. I was disgusted, though. I pushed him away and said, "Stay away from me." But it was like he didn't hear me. He just said,
"These have been some of the worst months of my life. I can barely sleep or eat. I can't believe you're alive."
Liar! He was a liar! I started shouting at him, saying, "Stop acting like you give a darn! You wanted me dead! Just wait until this gets out. You'll be behind bars for the rest of your life." Then I took the sketch out of my bag and threw it at him. Ronnie swore he'd never seen it before, but I didn't believe it. If it's not his, then was he trying to say it was mine, or what? Ha! Hilarious. Suddenly, Cody interrupted our argument and said,
"Calm down, please. Actually, I think the one who has been acting a bit shady recently is Kylie."
Then Cody told us how, according to our grandfather's will, his inheritance would be split equally between me and Kylie. However, I was to be the one in charge of the company. Kylie had found out about this and had a big argument with our grandfather. And then not long after my accident, his health had deteriorated. Instead of letting him mourn my death, Kylie had insisted he transfer the business to her name so she could take care of it all. Then Ronnie said,
"Bella, it was Kylie who set up our trip. Then you suddenly disappeared. I searched for you in Cambodia for weeks, but Kylie persuaded me to come home because your grandfather was so ill. Then the police canceled the case, and Kylie kept telling me to file your death certificate. I shouldn't have listened to her. I'm so sorry."
"Stop blaming other people for your problem," I growled at Ronnie, but inside my heart, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why would my sister do this? And then I heard Kylie's voice, and to prove it all, Ronnie told me and Cody to hide. And then he went towards her and said,
"Kylie, about Bella's death."
Before Ronnie could finish his sentence, she gave him a big smile and put her arm through his. "Well, now that her funeral is over, nothing is stopping us from being together, right?" Ronnie forced a smile. Then Kylie laughed and said, "Oh, come on. Don't be sad. My jealous sister didn't deserve you. You know what? She actually had this whole plan to test your loyalty, but then she ended up getting a taste of her own medicine." At that moment, my head started to hurt, and suddenly some of my old memories came flooding back. The sketch. It was mine. I was the one who'd made the plan. It all started when Kylie had told me that Ronnie was cheating on me, and I'd believed her and followed her advice to fake my own disappearance to test his love for me. How could I have been so stupid? When I realized I was alone in that forest and she wasn't coming back, I panicked and fell into a trapping pit, hurting my legs and getting stuck. It was all coming back to me now. I couldn't handle this. I ran towards her and painfully screamed, "How could you do this to me, Kylie?" At first, she was shocked to see me, but then she just smirked and said, "Huh, are you still alive? Well, either way, it's too late. The company is mine now. Oh, and so is Ronnie, baby." Then she just rolled her eyes and said, "You were just the adopted child, so what makes you think you have the right to always steal everything from me?" At that moment, our grandfather appeared and slammed his cane on the ground.
"Kylie, stop it."
Kylie just sulked and said, "Honestly, why would you give her the whole company?" Then our grandfather said,
"Look at yourself, Kylie. Are you really fit to be running a company? Sort yourself out. You are a disappointment to this family with your dirty, nasty tricks."
I couldn't believe Kylie was still using the adopted thing to hurt me. So what if I was adopted? That didn't mean I wasn't a part of this family. She'd always been so jealous of me, even though I hadn't done anything. Kylie started crying and ran out of there saying she was sick of never being anyone's favorite. Well, maybe if she hadn't left me to die, people would like her more. I was so shocked that she'd done this to me, and all because of jealousy. I won't lie. It took me so long to work through this. I still haven't forgiven her properly, but I guess it will just take time. As for me and Ronnie, we've taken over the family business, and I realized that Ronnie had always been loyal. Kylie had just made up that he was cheating because she couldn't bear to see me so happy. One thing's for sure, I won't ever be testing his love again. No more faking death for me.
Finally, I'm out of that morbid place. Now let me tell you, sharing a cell with a dozen other noisy, stinky, grumpy dudes ain't fun. Anyway, here I am, free as a bird now. So no one's here to pick me up. Suppose I'd have to call Mom. It took me a few seconds to familiarize myself with my phone. Jeez, it'd been 4 years. It was a miracle I hadn't turned into one of those leg-cradling crazy dudes. How I ended up in there in the first place was a joke. All I did was take some stuff from 1 or 2 warehouses and sell them on. No big deal. Yo, Mom, it's your boy Cole. I'm out, and yeah, I need a lift home. I spoke the moment I heard Mom's voice. Cole, Do you have any idea what hell your actions have put your mother through? My dad was so good at overreacting, but I needed somewhere to stay, so I could handle him. But Dad, Mom, come on, I'm still your son. You have the heart to see me homeless and sleeping next to rats? There was a brief pause. Then Dad grunted, You can stay for a few weeks, but only for your mother's sake. Thanks, Dad. You're the man. Bingo. My parents were like putty in my hands. This was the life. I played video games all day, then partied all night. Then one night, I was getting ready to meet my friend Moose, when Mom told me that the pizza delivery guy was at the door. I shouted down to her, You can shout me this one, and I'll get the next. I finished getting ready, and I must say, I was looking smooth. I strode down into the kitchen and grabbed a slice of pizza. Dad was sitting there glaring at me over his report. If you can't afford to pay for items, then I suggest you don't order them. He looked at the pizza slice in my hand. Mom walked up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. Darling, give him some more time. He's still adjusting to outside life. Thanks, Mom. You're the greatest. I gave her a greasy pizza kiss on the cheek. Any chance you can lend me some dough? Dad shook his head and sighed, while Mom went over to her purse and passed me some money. Hey, there'd be plenty of time to get a job and be responsible. Right now, I had 4 years of lost time to make up for. Once, I borrowed Dad's car. I swear I only had a couple of beers, but the world glitched out and went all blurry. The next thing I know, I'd driven straight into the neighbor's front yard. Oops. I opened my eyes the next morning to a killer headache, so all I wanted was some black coffee and a plate full of bacon. But I got Dad's death stare instead. Just when I think you can't get any more irresponsible, you took my car without asking, drank too much, then drove into Gloria's beloved rose bushes. Chill out, Dad. I'll fix it later, I said as I raided the fridge for food. You're not the one having to pay for the damages. We've made our decision. You have 1 week to get out of our house. Now hold up. I had 0 places to go. I couldn't stay with Moose, as he was crashing in his sister's garage, and I didn't know anyone else. How could they? I gotta chill a bit, so I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through dating apps. Then I matched with this stunning blonde called Trudy. She's a little older than me, but her family is rolling in dough, and also, she has her own business. Not only that, but she's hotter than an agitated dragon. So yeah, her photos seemed a little grainy, but guess the retro trend was in. Looks like I had it both ways, love and money. I have quite a face, but since I love beer and pizza, and without any dedication for the gym, I don't have the perfect body. But I needed to keep this girl interested. So I told her I was a tall dude with an impressive six-pack, who just graduated and was on the lookout for a girl with brains as well as beauty. This girl was actually pretty easy to talk to. She sent me pictures of her latest purchases, like phones, expensive watches, and designer clothes, along with the promise that when we started dating in person, she'd buy me whatever I wanted. Result: after 4 days of face pics and my priceless conversation, Trudy was smitten, and she sent me a message saying, Cole, I haven't known you long, but I know how I feel. I love you. X. Okay, that's really fast, but yeah, I've won the lottery over here. Hey, maybe she lied about her look too, but it didn't matter. She's rich. So I replied to her, I know, babes. I feel it too. X. We immediately arranged to meet in person and decided on a yellow dress code. I looked around the park trying to spot this gold mine, but all I could see was some old lady in a yellow dress. Okay, coincident, but why is she heading my way? The closer she got toward me, the wider her grin was. Cole, right? It's me, Trudy. What? No. How come this corny, overweight, wrinkly old lady be Trudy? I was expecting the blonde beauty from the photos, not Big Bird. Once I got over the initial shock, we sat down and talked. Turns out my dream girl was in her 50s. All the descriptions and photos of her were true, but 30 years ago. She was clearly in the middle of a midlife crisis or something. You're not the same either, she sneered. You're barely taller than me. And where's the gym body? All right, fair enough. I fake smiled. Yeah, despite you looking different, I still find you very beautiful. That night, I tossed and turned. This was all so unexpected. Trudy was totally not my type. But dating her might not hurt. She was rich. And also, I had to move out tomorrow. So at least she'd pay for me. With that, I sent her a message. Babe, you're beautiful, and I want to make us official. X. The next day, I moved in with Trudy. Now, let me tell you something. Her apartment was lavish. It was full of the latest tech. Crazy. Seeing as she was so old, she probably didn't know how to use them. She worked a lot, so most of the time I was home alone. And I was free to watch cartoons and movies, munch on potato chips, and play as many video games as I felt like. One time, I was watching a movie when the door opened. And in stepped this glary-eyed dude. I shouted at him, Hey dude, you have the wrong apartment. He tutted and said, I can assure you that I don't. I'm Alex, Trudy's son, and you must be Cole. I would say it's a pleasure to meet my mother's gold-digging boyfriend in the flesh, but unfortunately, it's not. What? Trudy has a son? And by the looks, he's even older than me. And how dare he called me a gold digger? I suppose I was, but still, he had no right to call me it. Even worse, he refused to leave. He just sat in the kitchen and waited for his mom to return. Then he had a heated argument with her in which he referred to me as a loser and a bum. Things weren't any better with my parents either. Dad told me to be independent and get a real job, not a sugar mama. And Mom was just crying. Whatever. This was their fault for kicking me out in the first place. What did they expect me to do? Live under a bridge? Few days after I met Alex, Trudy insisted on dragging me along to his lame work launch thing. As soon as I got there, I went straight to the food. I was stuffing a mini quiche into my mouth when this girl walked up alongside me and said, Great minds think alike. I gave her a gormless look. Then she pointed at the food. We both headed straight for the food. I laughed at that. This girl was funny. And hot. Really hot. Her name is Beatrice, and she works for that loser Alex. After that, I started seeing a lot more of this Beatrice girl, as she often popped over with Alex. And while he was arguing with his mom, usually about me, I chatted to her. That was how I found out she wasn't having it easy either. She was behind on her rent because her truant brother had stolen the money and spent it all. I felt bad for her, so I took the envelope full of cash that Trudy had given to me, and I handed it to her. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to buy anything new for a few weeks, but it was worth it just to know that she'd be okay. Truth was, I was really falling for Beatrice, but I couldn't do anything about it, as I was with Trudy, and I was relying on her handouts. Soon, things became stinky. I came out of the shower to see Trudy standing there with my phone in her hand. How could you? She threw it at me. Yeah, so she'd read all of the messages I'd sent to Moose, saying how I didn't find her remotely attractive and I was only with her for a free ride. Trudes, my babes, come on, those messages were just me joking. I laughed. I was just messing around. Shut up, you liar. You find me hideous. Alex was right. You were only using me for my money. And worse, you never went to college. Instead, you were in jail. I was about to lay on the cold charm when Alex and Beatrice bursted into the room. Alex shouted at me, "How lowlife you are. What a shameless gold digger." It's appalling. I've told her to report you to the cops. Beatrice interrupted. "No, don't do that. What Cole did was wrong, but he's not all that bad. Please." I was so moved. Took a look around. Trudy was crying. Alex was so furious his eyes were bulging. And Beatrice, well, she just looked disappointed. I then packed my stuff and left in shame. Well, that was a few months ago, and I have a decent job now. Even though I live back at home, I pay my way, and I'm saving up to put a deposit down on my own place. I never should have used Trudy like that. She might be old, but she still has feelings, and the way I treated her wasn't right. I was undeniably a douchebag back then. All I want is to have a happy life with Beatrice. I really love her, which is why I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she rejected me. Man, it stung, but I'm not giving up. Perhaps she might give me a chance once she sees I've changed. I can't fix the past. All I can do now is improve myself and keep on rolling forward.
I blinked open my eyes. Whoa, my head felt dizzy. And, why was I covered in scratches? My mind was totally blank. I couldn't remember what happened. The last picture flashing through my mind was a heated argument between me and some guy. Then I stormed off and now here I am, in this gloomy place. I think it's a basement or something. It's cold, and it stinks of damp. Dang it! I cannot remember his face. I knew I needed to get out of here, and fast. I ran to the door and tried opening it, but to no avail. It's locked. I slammed my hands against the door and shouted, "Anyone? Help!" I could hear footsteps approaching, so ignoring my throbbing palms and burning throat, I banged on the door and screamed out, "Open the door!" Oh my God! It's him! The guy I'd been arguing with before! He was holding a sandwich and smiling gently at me. "Oh, Alice, my puppy. Are you awake? I thought you might be hungry." "Who are you? You brought me here, didn't you? What do you want?" He looked confused, then sadly blurted out, "Oh no, honey. You must have memory loss from the accident. It's your Josh here. I'm your boyfriend." I squinted at him. He did look familiar, but what boyfriend? What accident? He showed me the photos on his phone. OMG! That was me with him, and we looked so happy together. But why can't I remember anything? I hit my head with my hands in frustration, while Josh just stood there against the wall staring at me and giggling. So maybe this Josh guy was my boyfriend, but that didn't explain why he'd locked me up in this dungeon. This wasn't a normal boyfriend thing to do. I rushed to the door, but he grabbed me in his arms. "Let me out! You definitely have some wicked intention going on bringing me here." I scowled. "Oh my gosh, Alice, you've been watching too many movies. Do you really not remember anything?" I gave him a clearly not look, then folded my arms. "I guess the accident was pretty intense. We argued, then you insisted on driving while you were drunk, and then caused a fatal accident. Never mind. I think we shouldn't go in too deep about that right now. It must be traumatizing for you. But that's why I decided to bring you here, so the cops wouldn't arrest you." What? Why couldn't I remember such a horrible thing? But looking at all the wounds on my face and body, maybe everything was exactly like what Josh said. No! I have to confess. I stuttered in tears. "Are you crazy? Do you want to go to jail?" But, Alice, no buts. I'm gonna protect you and keep you safe." This was a lot to process, so in a moment of panic, I found myself agreeing to his crazy plan. Josh said this was an emergency bunker back from his grandfather's time. Sure thing. I mean, it sure smelled musty. There's not even a window, just a flickering wall light. It felt like I was in a horror movie. Josh also told me that he'd taken my phone off me so the cops wouldn't be able to trace it and arrest us both. And that's it. Every morning, noon, and night, Josh would bring me food and talk to me about his day. "Puppy, I'm home." Puppy? Oh, it sounded cute at first, but I soon became allergic to that word. "Hey, puppy, eat this. Puppy this, puppy that. Puppy, puppy, puppy." I was so fed up with the word puppy that at times I actually thought I was nothing more than a pet to him. Then each night, he insisted on rubbing my back so I'd fall asleep more easily. Sounds nice, right? But no, it wasn't. He rubbed it really hard, and when I asked him to stop, he just laughed. Obviously, he wasn't doing it to make me feel better, but regarded it as a pastime. Ugh! And that's not all. A few times, I'd wake up to see him sitting there, staring at me with this gummy grin on his face. Then, when I checked my hair, I saw that he'd tied loads of these dumb little bows in it. "Are you crazy? I'm not a kid!" I grumbled while pulling and throwing all those dumb things out of my head. "But puppy, they look so cute. Tom always liked them." I glared at him. Didn't bother saying anything anymore. Oh, and FYI, yes, Tom's his old dog's name. Okay, so I didn't need a genius to figure out that something was seriously up with this guy's head. But then, things got weirder. One time, he brought down food for us to eat together. It was fried chicken, and as soon as I smelt it, my eyes sparkled. I was about to take a piece when suddenly he pulled the plate away and took a big bite. I didn't even have time to react. Then he handed me the chicken thigh bone he hadn't finished yet. "Help me with the rest, puppy. This part is too hard to gnaw." I rolled my eyes at him and flushed up with anger. Seeing my reaction, he said, "What's wrong, puppy? Tom always loved the leftovers." "Are you crazy?" I screamed. "Yo, I'm kidding. Don't you know how to take a joke?" He grinned. Kidding? What kind of kidding is that? I've had enough of this. This place was driving me insane. I could hardly sleep at all because I couldn't even distinguish between day and night. Then, when I did close my eyes, I found myself tormented by the serious crime I'd committed. Josh was trying to save me. Yes, but I didn't ask him to do that. I couldn't live like this. I needed to face the truth. I had to turn myself in. The next morning, when Josh brought me breakfast, I told him what I wanted to do. Expectedly, he got mad and glared at me. "Alice, why do you want to go to jail so badly?" "I can't stay here forever. I have to face up to what I've done." "But it's so peaceful here with me." Peaceful? Was he being serious? It sure didn't feel peaceful. Instead, I felt like I was playing the role of his pet. I lurched forward, but Josh immediately grabbed me so I couldn't move. I tried squirming my way free, but he was a strong guy. Suddenly, he covered my nose with a handkerchief and my eyes closed. Then everything turned black. I slowly opened my eyes. I was in the same familiar room, but bars. I saw bars! Ugh! I was in a cage! Then I kicked something. It was a water bowl! "Puppy, you're so naughty. I can't lose you, so I've put you in here." He grinned at me as he handed me a sandwich. I chucked it away, then screamed at him to let me out. Seeing this, he immediately left and returned with a bunch of plush toys and dropped them in the cage. "Hope they'll make you happier." Then he tried to stuff the sandwich into my mouth. Furiously, I took a bite and spat it in his face, then sneered while throwing the toys at him. Geez, some of them even squeaked. Wow. Okay. His demeanor changed, and his eyes turned scary. If that's what you want, don't blame me later. Things were different after that. Each day, he only gave me a bowl of those gross-smelling biscuits, then he'd just sit there gawping at me. At first, I refused to eat them. But in the end, I was so exhausted that I gave in, even though I'm pretty sure they were dog biscuits. Ugh! I realized that resisting him wasn't benefiting me at all. It was only making him act more horrible. That's when a genius plan popped into my head. So the next time when Josh appeared with the biscuits, I smiled sweetly at him and said, "Josh, baby, it's been so long since we've been on a date. How about you go and get us a bottle of wine, and we can spend some quality time together?" His eyes lit up, and of course, he agreed without hesitation. He hurried off to get the wine. "Cheers to us!" "Josh, you're the love of my life, and I'm so grateful to God for bringing you into my life. Please stay with me forever." I flashed a sweet smile and whispered in his ear. Every time he took a sip of wine, I fluttered my eyelashes at him as I refilled his glass. To say I'm a Hollywood actress with an Oscar-worthy performance would be an understatement. Soon, Josh was so drunk he went cross-eyed. He fell to the ground before I even finished pouring him the last glass of wine. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped over him to get out, when suddenly, a hand grabbed my ankle. Oh no, I'm screwed! My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. I immediately turned around, ready to fight him when, well, it turned out he was just dreaming. Phew. Thank God. I gently pulled my foot free and immediately dashed out of there. I climbed up the stairs to a living room where I found my phone left on the table. I quickly grabbed it and ran out of that horrible house. My legs trembled, and I felt like they might give away beneath me at any second. But somehow, I managed to find the inner strength to keep on running. I couldn't use my phone as it was out of battery, and I was too disoriented to figure out where my home was. So, when I stumbled upon a police station, I walked toward it. I took a deep breath. This was a tough decision. I knew I was going to jail, but I couldn't live in creepy Josh's basement forever and be his substitute pet. No thanks. I had to face up to what I'd done. "Sir, I'm here to confess." The cop looked confused and told me there hadn't been a fatal accident recently. But then he said I looked familiar, so he looked up my name, and turns out my family had reported me missing. That liar Josh had tricked me. It was all a ruse so he could imprison me. How vile! I charged my phone, and up popped hundreds of messages and voicemails from my worried friends and relatives. This was all so overwhelming. I put my head down for a moment. Then all the memories gradually surfaced. I'd been in the mall parking lot, and I felt like someone was following me. So I hid in the corner, and that's when Josh appeared. So I asked him, "Why are you following me?" "Alice, I love you. Please come back to me." I rolled my eyes and started walking away from him. "Go away, weirdo! We're done!" Then he grabbed my shoulder. I shook myself free and ran away, when a car came out of nowhere and... Ugh! Yes, of course. Josh was my crazy, controlling stalker ex. So he must have taken advantage of my unconsciousness to take me back to his basement and come up with his bonkers plan. Then to make things even easier for him, I ended up with memory loss. Typical! It was a nightmare. But thankfully, it's over now. The cops took my statement, and soon after that, my family came to pick me up. They all burst out crying, and we hugged each other tightly. It's taking a while to get back to normal life after all the trauma, but I'm getting there. I do want to vomit whenever I hear anyone say the word puppy. Ugh. However, this didn't stop me from getting my own rescue dog, Lily the Corgi, and I never put bows in her fur. As for Josh, well, he was convicted for false imprisonment and has to stay in jail for 4 years. Who's in the cage now? Serves you right. I entered the apartment to see 4 sets of eyes gawping at me. Hang on, I know Ned and Philip from my math class, and the girl currently giving me a snooty look while twirling her hair around her finger was Jessica. Well, I didn't actually know her, but her wealthy and snobbish reputation preceded her. Then lastly was that emo kid. What was his name again? Deciding to break the uncomfortable silence, I said, "Oh, hey, so guess you guys are also in detention?" No one replied, though they surely heard me. Whoa, okay. This atmosphere was tense, and I thought I'd always been the awkward one. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm being made to do this weird detention. All I did was accidentally and poorly throw the dodgeball in the gym teacher's face. Then, when I was about to apologize, my tongue slipped. But, aren't you supposed to be the toughest since you're the gym teacher? I mumbled. Naturally, she was livid, so I ended up in the principal's office, and he handed me a piece of paper with an apartment address on it and said, "Go here for your detention. You'll stay here until you've learned your lesson." Huh? What type of unspecific instructions were those? Before I could ask him any more, he shooed me out of his office. Now, here I am in this random apartment with these untalkative kids. As I looked at them, I couldn't help but wonder what they'd done to end up here, especially when Ned was an excellent student. Did he make the wrong move in the chess club or something? We continued the whole staring at each other in silence routine. But then the door burst open and stormed in Gwen, our school's resident carefree tomboy. She sneered out, "Good evening, babies." Great! Now I was stuck sharing a living space with a girl renowned for playing pranks such as toilet papering the principal's car and filling the biology lab with live frogs. But seriously, how were we at her truancy level? Let's see who we have here. Gwen rubbed her hands as she walked around and stared at us. Princess Jessica? Oof, how come? She raised an eyebrow and grinned sarcastically. Just sit down and shut up. Gwen gave him a dirty look. This isn't basketball. You're not the captain here, jock. Then she squared up to him. Ned turned pale. Jessica rolled her eyes, and the emo boy, well, he was busy sketching something and clearly chose to ignore our existence. We'd only been here for less than an hour, and the last thing we needed was a fist fight, so I stepped in between them. Pulling a wry face, Gwen said, "What's this? Little Miss Friendly?" Look, we're all stuck here and we don't know for how long, so let's at least try to be civil. Let's try talking it out. So, I'm Ashley, and I'm here because of a misunderstanding with a gym teacher and a dodgeball. Geez, nobody cares! I can't believe I have to be here with these people! Jessica stood up and left. Pff, I'm with Miss Popular on this one. Ned sneered before he also left. And the emo boy, too. Then Gwen rasped and disappeared. There was only Philip and me left in the room. He was meant to be handsome and stuff, but looking at him now, I didn't think so. Ugh, this awkward silence was insufferable. This was just like that movie, The Breakfast Club, but much worse, and in much longer time. Who on earth had to pack clothes for detention? I had no idea how long I had to stay here for. So I decided to go to bed. I walked into the girls' room to see that both of the beds next to the window were already occupied. Bummer. They'd taken the best spots. I reluctantly got into the only bed left and hoped that tomorrow wouldn't suck as much as today had. The next morning, I woke up to yelling. Huh? I rubbed my eyes and yawned. It was still far too early. I went out into the corridor to see what was going on, and saw Jessica and Ned arguing over the apartment's only bathroom. Jessica wanted to apply her makeup, while Ned really needed to go. Then Philip watched on and butted in on occasion to say something dumb. "Why don't you use some of your nerdy mathematics to solve your problem?" "The only reason you need to spend so long applying makeup is because you're ugly." "Ooh, burn!" Philip laughed. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed shut. They rushed over to it and tried opening it to no avail. 10 minutes later, the emo kid stepped out. Jessica screamed at him. "How dare you! My personal stuff is still in there." I watched on, wide-eyed. OMG! These people were ridiculous! How was I meant to live with them? In the end, we eventually came to an agreement about the bathroom's rule. It was first come, first serve, but each of us could only have the throne for a max 15 minutes. Being in such a small space with people I barely knew was always going to be problematic, but not having our phones as a distraction made it so much harder. We had one TV, but there's only one lousy channel on it. No one cleaned up, no one seemed to get along. Ugh, seriously? When will this end? All of the constant dirt and arguing was driving me nuts. But then the final straw was this one time when I was washing my face, the cleansing foam accidentally got into my eyes to wipe it out. But to my horror, when I opened my eyes, so I quickly reached for a towel, I saw myself holding someone's sock instead. Yuck! After that, I gathered everyone and threw the sock onto the floor and said, "We need to sort out order, as I can't live like this anymore. It's gross." Jessica snorted. "Who are you to boss around? No one cares what you think." Before I even had a chance to say anything back, Ned piped in that Jessica was just a dumb rich girl who never lifted a finger. Then Gwen jumped up to her feet and started shouting for no reason. Philip gave me this smirky know-it-all look that made me want to scream. Then he actually lobbed a basketball at me, which almost took my head off. Then, ignoring the others, I started shouting at him. The only one who stayed quiet was the emo boy. "You aren't even that pretty. In fact, I've seen more attractive slugs," I heard Ned say to Jessica. That was a bit much, wasn't it? I mean, it was obvious Ned only teases Jessica because he has a huge crush on her. Jessica huffed as she tossed her hair behind her back, then stormed off to her room. Man, this place sucks. At least lunchtime had arrived. So I made myself a delicious-looking burger, then quickly went to the bathroom. When I returned, I couldn't believe it. Philip was taking a bite out of my burger. I screamed at him, but then he shrugged, then said he'd make me a new one. And like a decade later, my replacement lunch finally arrived, and Philip was smiling at me strangely and watched on as I bit into it. Ew! I lifted up the top of the bun to see a raw piece of beetroot. Ugh. I was so fed up with everyone that I went to bed super early that night. Only when I woke up the next day, both Jessica and Gwen burst out laughing at me. I hurried to the bathroom and checked out my face. Oh no. Turns out someone had drawn on my pillow, and now I had ink all over my face. I had to scrub my face for ages to get it off. Then Philip wouldn't quit laughing at me. I knew he was responsible. Ugh! Such a jerk! And on the other hand, we also had the emo kid that I was seriously getting sick of. He never said or did anything. Instead, he just sat there, usually wearing his stompy boots and looking all moody. I mean, why wear those sweaty-looking boots when he's stuck inside? It was about time he spoke up, so I came up with a prank to get him talking. When the emo kid was in the shower, Ned and I filled his beloved boots with mayo. A little later, I heard some loud thump. Then the emo kid did a weird walk across the room with his foot covered in mayo while clutching one of his boots. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. And not gonna lie, I was intimidated by this other side of him. Then out of nowhere, Jessica appeared. She turned to me and shoved my shoulder. "That was too much, don't you think?" "Oh, no, you didn't. I wasn't gonna let someone like her speak to me like that and get away with it. So I struck a defensive pose and glared at her. We ended up in a stare-off when suddenly I felt arms pulling me back. It was Philip. I tried flailing free of his grip, which caused him to lose his balance, and he accidentally elbowed Gwen. "Oh, you're done, Jock!" Soon, Jessica and I were pulling each other's hair, and Gwen and Philip were shoving each other. It was mayhem. "Stop! All of you!" It was the emo kid. He glared at us with rage. "You're acting like immature brats!" Well, that was unexpected, but I guess it worked, as a few seconds later, we started cleaning up the mess we'd made. We knew something needed to change, so at dinner, we all sat around the table and tried to sort things out. The others were all staring down at their food and not talking, so I decided to go first. So, I'm here because I don't always react well to certain situations. I don't know, I guess I find it hard to make friends. I trailed off. Then Ned spoke up. "The only word my mom seems to know nowadays is study, study, study. I feel like all I am to her is a grade. So when I got a B in English Lit, I ripped it up in front of the teacher. That's the story." Jessica flicked back her hair, then said, "Try having all the money you could ever want, but the most neglectful parents ever. I bet they still haven't noticed that I've been stuck here with you losers for days now, just because I told some girl her skirt was hideous. I was doing her a favor. Poof." Then Philip blurted out, "My father wanted me to be strong and manly just like him. I don't want to be like him, but I'm worried I will be, and that I won't be able to do anything about it. So I skipped basketball practice, got into an argument with coach and my dad, and now I'm in the weirdest detention ever." Gwen sneered. "Least your dad's around. Mine does month-long disappearing acts. And my mom's dead. Oh, and I'm here because I put paint in some clown's locker. Serves them right for bad-mouthing me." Her words were followed by an intense silence. Awkward, but I felt like I understood everyone a little better now. Oh, but hang on. The emo kid hadn't said anything. "Hey, you." I looked at him. "So, what's your story?" He shrugged, and I didn't think he was going to talk, but then in a quiet voice he said, "I'm Stan. I never knew my dad. My mom isn't around, so I live with my grandparents. I'm here because I ignored the principal, but only because I had earphones in." "Oh," I muttered out. "Look, I'm sorry about your boots. I'll help you clean them if you like." Stan nodded. Jessica was right. I had been a bit harsh on him. Then Ned gave this awkward smile and said, Jessica, I know I've been a jerk to you, but it's only because I like you." Jessica didn't do so much as flinch. She still kept studying her nails. Probably because having boys smitten over her was already a part of her daily routine. "Well, I might like someone too." Phil stretched his arms behind his chair. "I guess I like winding her up." He looked directly at me. I felt myself blushing, and I had this weird fluttering feeling in my stomach. But why? My heart started racing. Now what was I meant to do? "I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters." "Thank you." She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. "I'm very proud of this one." Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up, then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. "Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission?" "Skateboarding," I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions. But Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous. So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes. You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then, clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty. Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work. Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay, as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also, less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet, so I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, That's pretty good. Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. You should give it a try. This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mom or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mom snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mom told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mom blocked the door. Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand washing. What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, In that case, she can wash it herself. Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told. Through angry sobs, I screamed at her. I wish you weren't my mom! Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own, so they could go and work away on their secret mission. We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now. Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted! No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. Jamie, come down here, sweetie. Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, "Yes, I know," then sweetly grinned. I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both. The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay? Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life. So I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon? I answered, I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park. Did you see my notebook? The leather one? I shook my head in response. Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it. She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. Jamie, I miss you a lot. Can I come over to your house tomorrow? I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me. Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barneses. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you. Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the doorframe to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie. They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all. Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this. Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us. He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. Charlotte, I have something to give to you. Then she handed me a small box full of cash. This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry. My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again, I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me.
It was a normal Monday morning. I was standing by my locker when this Layla girl walked over, leaned against the locker next to mine, and talked to me in this sultry voice. Hi, handsome. Do you have any plans after school? I looked around in confusion. Huh? Was she talking to me? Usually girls like Layla didn't talk to guys like me. I mean, come on, look at her. She's the hottest girl in school. While I'm Felix, just your average-looking nerdy guy. I awkwardly replied, Oh, hi, I'm just doing my homework after school, bye. Then I left her there, dumbfounded. But it didn't end there. At the end of school, she approached me again and asked, Do you want to hang out with me? Followed by a wink. No thanks, I really have to finish my paper on the French Revolution. Then I walked off. Man, did she really want to hang out with me? No way. She must have lost a bet or something. Even on the next day, Layla, one more time, made a beeline for me with this scary, determined look on her face while I was chatting with my friends. And in a serious tone, she said, Look, Felix, do you want to be my boyfriend? What? All my friends started to cheer. I was so embarrassed that I shooed them away to get some privacy with Layla. I'm flattered, but no. She scowled at me. Excuse me? Do you realize that I'm Layla Hall, the prettiest and most popular girl in this entire school? Not to mention a member of the cheerleading team? Ugh, cheerleaders are so dramatic. I calmly replied, Sorry, but you're just not my type. She shouted back, What? I'm everybody's type! I just shrugged and left. My God, that was awkward. But at least she got the hint now, right? Well, wrong. Because that's when the trouble just began. Firstly, it was this flood of junk emails and newsletters, then strange phone calls from the spa and nail salon, asking if I had made an appointment for the day, which I obviously didn't. On top of that, there's a fake Facebook account that started spreading unflattering pictures of me around, picking my nose in French class, pulling this weird tongue-out concentration face as I checked over my essay. There was even a slow-mo clip of me chewing like a camel as I enjoyed my burger. Man, I was an ugly eater. While I was scrolling through these pics, Layla jumped out at me with a big smirk on her face. Be my boyfriend, then the pranks'll stop. Right, of course it was her. Didn't she have better things to do? I shook my head and said, no thanks. This still beats being with an annoying girl like you. Then a few days later, as I walked into school, I noticed that everyone was giving me dirty looks. Was my shirt inside out or something? Nope. So what was the problem? I asked some of my friends and, geez, Layla told everyone that I kissed her, then ghosted her. She's a real-life Harley Quinn. Hot, but totally crazy. Only a lunatic like the Joker could love her. I'd had enough of her antics. I couldn't let her make me look like the bad guy for something I didn't do. So at lunch, I charged over to her table and yelled in her face, "Are you crazy? Why can't you understand that I don't like you?" Then I shouted so everyone could hear me. Hey, listen, this rumor about me kissing and ghosting Layla is a total lie. She made it all up because I refused to date her. So please, save your dirty looks for someone else. Thank you. Layla shoved past me and ran out of there. Ugh, okay, maybe I was a little harsh. But you'd brought it on yourself, princess. Then during French class, she was absent, but no one knew where she went. Was it maybe because of me? Nah, probably not. But as I was walking home, I spotted her sitting alone on a swing in the playground. Just go, Felix. This girl only brings trouble, I thought to myself. But oh man, she looked so sad. So the next thing I knew, I was walking over and sat on the swing next to her. I asked, "Why weren't you in French class?" "Just leave me alone. Stop pretending you care." "Look." I took a deep breath, then continued. "I'm sorry for yelling at you in front of the whole school. That wasn't cool. But what you did to me wasn't cool either. Shall we call it even?" Layla stayed quiet for a bit, but then she nodded and smiled at me. Well, that wasn't so bad, right? So from then onward, everything was fine between us. She even smiled at me in the hallway. Whenever I saw Layla, this warm feeling came over me, and I couldn't stop grinning. Once, I even spent my entire lunch break trapezing around school just so I could catch a glimpse of her face. Oh boy, I think I've fallen for Layla. But why now? I tried to ignore these feelings, hoping they'd eventually go away. But then Valentine's Day came along, and Layla, being the popular girl she is, received enough roses to open a florist. Ugh, how annoying. I needed to do something. So after school, I went to her house with some chocolates and a teddy bear. As soon as she opened the door, I blurted out, "I know I'm a big dumb idiot. Rejecting you was a huge mistake. Please, will you be my Valentine?" I stood there red-faced and prepared for rejection. But she just snatched the gift out of my hands, then said, "Yeah, okay then." Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Me, your regular nerdy guy, was dating the most popular girl in school. Love is really unpredictable. I was amazed at how open she was to my nerdy stuff. She even watched The Mandalorian with me and cooed whenever she saw Baby Yoda. But the one thing that didn't gel so well between us was, yep, you guessed it, studying. Layla didn't seem to care about her grades, and I didn't want her to fail, so I offered to be her tutor. But she was constantly yawning and staring out of the window whenever we started studying. "Felix, I have an idea. Why don't you do my homework for me? In the meantime, I can go to cheerleading practice as we have an important contest coming up, and it means the world to me, just like your math quizzes do to you." What? Was she serious? My God, I hated cheating like this. But she gave me that puppy-eyed look, and me being the sucker I am, I agreed. "Thanks, Felix, you're the best." She kissed me on the cheek, then immediately passed me a huge pile of homework. I asked her why she had so much, and she explained that because she didn't understand it, she let them pile up. But hold on, why did she have Spanish? She was in French class with me, not Spanish. But she just shrugged and said her parents forced her to study it outside of school. Oh, my poor little pumpkin. One day, like usual, I stopped by her place to pick up her homework, but she wasn't home. That was odd. Today wasn't cheerleading practice, so where could she be? I looked through the stack that she asked her mom to give me and saw some Spanish worksheets. So I said to her mom, "Oh, she must be in her Spanish lesson, right?" Her mom looked a bit confused, then laughed. "You know Layla, she's far too stubborn to agree to extra classes." Huh? So the papers weren't hers? Then whose it was? And why? Suddenly I felt this uncomfortable feeling itching under my skin. I decided to confront her later at school. Then the next day I was walking through the hallway looking for Layla when I suddenly heard some guys cheering, something about getting an A in Spanish. Wait a minute, did he say Spanish? I turned to see who it was, and to my shock it was Hector, the captain of the soccer team. Hector was popular for being all handsome and everything, but also for sucking at school. Someone must have done his homework for him, and you guessed it, yeah. This someone was me. It all made sense now. Layla and Hector must be a couple. They may have been hot stuff, but they both sucked at studying. So she was using me to do both of their homework. It all made much more sense now. None of this relationship was real. It was all just an act. And no way was I letting them get away with this. I had a perfect plan to expose them. During lunch, I sat down at the table closest to Hector. Then I went into lovey-dovey overload with Layla. I fed her cheese fries, then I stroked her hair and loudly told her how soft it was. I quickly glanced over at Hector for his reaction, but nothing. He seemed more interested in her burger than her. Layla raised an eyebrow at me. Are you okay? You're acting really weird. I laughed loudly, then placed my arms around her, then said, it was actually more like shouting, "Oh, because you're so cute!" But why was there still no reaction from Hector? He and his friends even cheered, and on his way out of the canteen, he gave me a thumbs up. Layla didn't look fazed at all either. Man, somebody call the academy, 'cause these two deserved an Oscar. My plan was a massive fail. This was so frustrating. I fell silent, and Layla noticed and gave me this quizzing look. Something is definitely off. You're being really strange. Okay, if she wanted to know, then fine. So I blurted out, I know that the Spanish papers belong to Hector. You're together and you're just using me to do all your homework. I'm not stupid, you know. Nice meeting you, but please don't ever talk to me again. Then I left without saying a word. Well, that's the end of my story. A rather sad one, right? I would be lying if I said I wasn't feeling down about it. I truly do love her. Whatever. I'm going to college in a few months and I'll get to meet a cute, geeky girl who won't trick me into doing some other dude's homework. Sorry guys, someone's calling me. My God, it's Layla. What does she want? We're done. Stop calling. What? Fine. Promise you'll leave me alone after this? Okay, wait, I'm coming downstairs. Oh my God. Layla's at my front door and she insists to not leave unless I have a talk with her. Ugh. Don't move, everyone. I'll tell you every detail as soon as I'm back. Jesus, guys, you won't believe what Layla's just told me. The thing is that her cheerleading team had to practice a lot for upcoming contests, which means they couldn't study as much. Therefore, they had to find someone who was willing to do their homework so their grades wouldn't slip. That's when Layla came up with the plan to win me over as her boyfriend. The flirting, the pranks, they were all part of her plan. That was the truth. But Layla didn't know about the Spanish worksheets because her teammate Harper gave them to her. Turns out Hector is Harper's boyfriend. Didn't see that coming, right? But I was still super mad at Layla because she still used me. Then Layla took out some papers and showed them to me. It was homework with all B's on them. Then she told me, okay, I admit that at first I didn't like you. I only approached you to take advantage of you. But then I actually fell for you as I got to know you better, okay? So I stopped giving you my homework and did it on my own. So, her feelings for me were real too? I couldn't believe it. Eventually I forgave her and now we're happier than ever. I must say, when Layla first talked to me, I thought she was this crazy girl like Harley Quinn who I could never like. But I was wrong. Turns out I'm the one who's crazy about her. So, I guess I have more in common with the Joker than I first thought.
Why do we have to study logarithms? Will they help us with stockbroking? Surely not. Why suddenly create the X and then force us to find it? And why do I have to prove that it's an isosceles triangle? I see clearly that it is. Duh! Then I received the note back saying, "What are you two talking about?" I just figured that another kid had intercepted it. So with my eyes still glued to my level 3692 of Candy Crush, I scrawled back, "Keep your nose out of my business," and then handed the paper over without looking. Ahem. But your business is taking place in my class. I slowly looked up and saw that it was my teacher. Oh, dang. Busted again. Looking over, I saw Brett with his big guilty face. Ugh, He should have been more careful. Okay, you. And you. Out. You're probably wondering how I'm such a pro at this pose. Well, it's because I've done it 1,000 times. And that serious woman over there is Mrs. Megan, my math teacher. I swear, she totally has it in for me. Okay, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who, due to an unexpected accident with a trash can and an ill-placed skateboard, ended up arriving a teensy bit late for her exam. But the teacher refused to let her in, and also failed her. Grrr. Yeah, that girl was me, Lexi. Thus, from that moment forth, she became my arch enemy. So, during her boring lecture, I threw a paper plane at the board and said, "Miss, you've spelled arithmetic wrong. I suppose spelling is a bit hard for a numbers person like you. It's okay." Clearly my comment got to her, as during that same class, she picked on me to graph a function. Easy peasy. So I created a masterpiece that made her eyes roll, and the whole class found it hilarious. And as expected, she gave me a lengthy lecture on my childish behavior, and even threatened to call my parents. Poof! Yeah, good luck with that, as unless it involved business, then my parents were practically impossible to reach. Besides, I was just having a laugh. Mrs. Megan needed to lighten up. So I secretly stuck a piece of paper saying "free hugs" on her back. I lurked behind a tree and watched as all these people surrounded her. She looked so bewildered as she tried to navigate past them while having no idea what was going on. The good old days. Suddenly, Brett patted my shoulder and told me 30 minutes had passed and we needed to go back to class. My butt hadn't even touched my chair when I heard a patronizing voice say, "You shouldn't act like that." Ugh, that's Faye, the teacher's pet and a real pick-me girl. Every time the teacher asks a question, she wriggles her arm in the air and squeaks out, "Me, me, me!" Mrs. Megan only likes her because she always laughs at her boring jokes. Oh well, I may have no proof, but in my experience, Faye's definitely not as innocent as she looks. Don't say I'm jealous, 'cause I'm 100% not. You probably think I hate school, but it's still way better than my so-called home. Ugh. At least school could be amusing, while my home life consisted of mom and dad locked away in their office 24/7. I can't remember the last time either of them cooked dinner. So takeaway it is. So I'm texting Ben, my super sexy BF. He's been studying in France, and he's back today. I've missed him so much, but unfortunately, I couldn't pick him up from the airport because of, school. And tonight, he has a family party, but we're meeting up tomorrow. Yay! Let me see your face, sweetie. I miss you. You know what? Today, that teacher gave me detention again. Really? She messed with the wrong one, didn't she? Definitely. I will retaliate tomorrow. She'd better watch out. Okay, but don't end up in after-school detention, as I want to see you. My mom's also a teacher, but she's not that much. Oh, by the way, she's here. You want to say hello? Yeah, sure. Ben, it gets on my nerves whenever I think of that Before I had a chance to finish my words, a person popped up on the screen. Mrs. Megan! Lexi? OMG! We both gave each other stunned, open-mouthed stares. It looked like the screen had frozen. Literally! Then just when I didn't think it could get any worse, suddenly a familiar voice broke the silence. Oh, Ben has a girlfriend? Let me see her. Huh? That's Faye! Oh my days, this is too much to process. My two enemies were in the same frame. Shocked, I ended the call. Right after, I received a text from Ben saying, "Don't worry, my mother may look super serious, but she's kind. And the girl is Faye, my neighbor. We've known each other since childhood, and she's cool." This was so crazy. Now I'd have to face them both every day, knowing that they're associated with my BF. Oh, the future is as dark as night. And yeah, this is the beginning of the series thusly entitled Living with My Future Mother-in-Law and My BF's Annoying Female Best Friend. And since then, things at school turned weird. For our class Halloween event, which had a Toy Story theme, Mrs. Megan was in charge of handing out the parts. Faye was Bo Peep, and she had this really cute outfit. While me, I was stuck as Mrs. Potato Head. My outfit was so lame, and one of my googly eyes kept on falling off. Ugh! It was so embarrassing, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't mess with her anymore, as I still wanted to be with her son. Ugh. Worse still, math class became an endurance test. I was so sick of being compared to that goody two-shoes Faye. Lexi, if you spent more time studying and less time painting your nails, you'd be a top student like Faye. Poof! Faye caught on to what was going on and also started playing tricks on me. One time in class, when I was dozing and Mrs. Megan was correcting the homework, I overheard, "This symbol shows that A is not equal to B." Faye then turned around and whispered, "Just like you, you're not equal to me. And you don't deserve my Ben either." What? Ben is mine, not hers. I bared my teeth and was about to say something when that brat started pretending to cry, saying that I was picking on her. Out! Mrs. Megan came to us with burning eyes. We were walking out when in a sympathetic tone she added, "Faye, you stay." I returned to my meditating pose, but, I couldn't shake off my anger. How unfair! Later, when it was lunchtime, Faye walked over to me with a cup of Coke, saying it was a peace offering, and that she was sorry for earlier. This was confusing, but whatever. I took it and was about to take a sip when Brett rushed over waving his arms about. "Lexi, stop!" I saw Faye put soy sauce in it. I was just a second away from yelling at her when Mrs. Megan appeared. I smiled smugly, thinking Faye would finally get into trouble. But to my surprise, Mrs. Megan took a sip of the drink and tried to keep a neutral face as she replied, "There's nothing wrong with it." Really? They went that far to cover up for each other? Whatever. I had a date with Ben tonight to prepare for anyway. That night as planned, I arrived at Ben's house with a somewhat wilting pot plant for Mrs. Megan. I was kinda excited to finally have a cooked meal. Only, when I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't smell anything cooking. Mrs. Megan appeared and rubbing her hand said, "Lexi, you don't mind cooking, do you? It's just been a long week of drawing diagrams. My hand kinda aches." Seeing the situation, Ben immediately came to help, but she reminded him that he'd agreed to fix a pipe or something. To be honest, I'd never touched a frying pan before. But I mean, how hard could it be? I'd make pancakes, though it's not really suitable for dinner, but I'd seen them on a 5-minute crafts and they were clearly a breeze to make. Only, it didn't go to plan. In situations like this, it's important not to panic. But, yeah, I panicked. I needed a plan B. Quick! In a rush, I threw away all the evidence of the failed pancakes and ordered food online. After all, thanks to my workaholic parents, this was my forte. I instructed the delivery person to come to the back door, so Ben and Mrs. Megan would be none the wiser. Expectedly, at the very first bite, Ben and my mother-in-law praised me profusely for my food, and Ben even joked that I should join the next season of Master Chef. Yo, I will rate this restaurant 5 stars for sure. Mrs. Megan suddenly dropped her spoon, so I quickly bent down to pick it up, only she leaned down and whispered sarcastically, "I order from Sydney's too. Their sauces are divine." Oh, busted! Then, halfway through the night, this man showed up and apologized for being late. Turns out he was Jim, Faye's father, but Faye wasn't coming over as she was out with friends. Happy days! I watched Mrs. Megan and him touch a tissue box at the same time by mistake, and then blushed? Huh? Oh, I get it. She liked him. Now it made sense why she was always sucking up to Faye. "Have you thought about remarrying?" I asked Jim innocently. To the waiting eyes of me, as well as Mrs. Megan, he hesitantly answered, I don't think Faye would like that." Mrs. Megan glumly stared down at the floor. Okay, so I actually felt kinda sorry for her. Besides, matchmaking has always been my hobby, so I decided to help her. I knew that Faye was at a party on Saturday night, so I decided this was the perfect opportunity to play Cupid. I told Mrs. Megan that Jim had something to tell her, so meet him at the Golden Reef restaurant at 7 p.m. Then I told Jim the same. I stood behind a column and watched them share their starter, and then give each other gooey-eyed glances. Then Jim reached out and took Mrs. Megan's hand. They were looking at each other passionately when Faye suddenly rushed in from nowhere and angrily slammed her bag on the table. "So this is it? My teacher? And my dad? For real?"
Faye, why are you here?"
Jim stuttered. "No one can ever replace Mom!" Then she turned to a dumbfounded-looking Mrs. Megan. "Turns out you were only being nice to me to get my dad. You're fake. Stay away from us." Mrs. Megan covered her face with her hands, then quickly left. Geez, Faye was brutal. And however annoying Mrs. Megan was, she didn't deserve that. "You!" Faye shouted. Uh-oh, her gaze fixed on me. "It figures you'd be behind this. Keep your big nose out of our family business and start caring about yours instead. Guess this is what lack of parental care does to a kid." I stared at her speechless. Those words should have driven me mad, but for some reason, I only felt sad. And so guilty. I really just meant well. So, first thing at school the next day, I swallowed my pride and went to Mrs. Megan's classroom, where she looked lost in thought as she marked homework. I coughed to clear my throat, then said, "Miss, I'm sorry. I honestly was trying to help, but now I realize I should have minded my own business. I'm also sorry for being a jerk in your class." She was silent at first, then replied, "It's okay, as I've come to realize that you and I aren't so different. We both have complications in the way of finding love. Guess it's really not easy to get approval from your parents' family, huh?" She smiled and gently stroked my hair before continuing, "You're such a smart and kind girl, and I always knew you could do better in class, that I must have been too harsh on you. I'm sorry, too." I smiled back at her, and at that moment, I felt like all of our previous conflicts melted away. And I realized that I shouldn't neglect my studies. Instead, I should work hard to become the best version of myself. So, with a lot of hard work, I went from trailing at the bottom of the class to reaching the top spot, even overtaking Faye. Ha! Speaking of Faye, she was still ignoring both me and Mrs. Megan, and never put her hand up in class anymore. But then a rainbow flame experience in the chem lab changed things. Everyone ran out of there when the curtain caught on fire, except for a terrified Faye. Luckily, Mrs. Megan rushed inside to rescue her just in time, and covered her with a jacket as she led her to safety. After that, Faye realized that Mrs. Megan is a good person who cares about both her and Jim. So, through blurry eyes, Faye sobbed out, "Thank you so much. And sorry, I was too childish. Please forgive me." A few months later. So, yeah, you see, my wing woman plan worked. And now I have a second family, a really big one. But you know what's the best thing? That is, I no longer have to order food online anymore, 'cause I will stick to here, and my mother-in-law will cook for me. I'd just finished my shift and was walking out of the coffee shop to head home when I suddenly heard a voice say, "Hi, are you Catherine Mill?" Ugh, what else? I'm exhausted already. I reluctantly turned around to a view that almost made me leap out of my skin. Standing in front of me was a girl with a face exactly like mine. Who are you? I stammered. I felt like I was seeing things. She smiled at me and said, I'm Tracy. Is this wallet yours? Oh, wow, you found it. I dropped it at the Seattle Mariners baseball game. I never thought I'd see it again. That's right. We met there. Then Tracy took out a cap and put it on. Hang on. That hat seemed so familiar. And so did that smile. Are you the one I accidentally bumped into at the stadium? That must have been when I dropped my wallet. I was in such a hurry to get to my seat that I'd gone crashing into Tracy. At the time, she was wearing that cap, so all I saw was her smile. But now seeing her standing here, it was like looking in the mirror. I kept staring at her as she said, Yep, that was me. In fact, I came to find you not just to return your wallet, but because I need a favor. Can we chat for a sec? Sure. Let's go back inside the cafe. What favor could she possibly want? Well, I was about to find out. Catherine, I'm just going to say it outright. We have something in common, don't we? I hesitated to speak up, but I knew exactly what she was talking about. She then continued. I mean, look at us. You're basically my doppelganger, which brings me to this favor to ask for. Kathy, I was hoping you'd impersonate me. I'll pay you, of course. I'll pay you a lot. Before I could even reply, Tracy handed me an envelope and showed me a photo of some very posh-looking people. This is my family, she said. Wait, what? Turns out they were royals, or something close to. Her grandfather had been an earl in the UK, and then they'd moved over here to Washington. They're what you'd call an aristocratic family. So, yep, mega wealthy. Must be nice, I thought. However, it was suffocating Tracy, and that all of the duties that came with being from a family of nobility drove her crazy. Plus, one other little problem. She was in love with a guy that her family definitely wouldn't approve of, because he came from a normal family. Her parents had arranged for her to marry the son of one of the country's richest CEOs. And so that's what led us to now. She wanted to hire me to pretend to be her, so that she could be with her lover boy without troubles. I was stunned. What if someone finds out? I muttered, and shoved the envelope back into her hands, saying that it was too much money. But Tracy just laughed. Oh, this is just the initial payment. You'll receive so much more. Please, I'm begging you. Think about it. Then she looked at me with proper sadness in her eyes. I really did feel sorry for her, but I needed some time. And it would be better to get my mom's opinion on this first. Ever since I'd been a little girl, I'd always talked things through with her. She was the only family I had, and the only one I could trust and rely on. Mom would know what to do. When I got home, I found my mom waiting for me at the table. We ate dinner together in silence, as I could barely focus. She knew something was up right away. Honey, what happened at work? I hesitated, then handed her the photo of Tracy's family. My mom, as you can guess, was shocked to see how much Tracy looked like me, and so I told her what had gone down earlier. I explained that she offered me a ton of money to impersonate her, but that it felt risky. I'd assumed my mom would be dead set against it, but what she said surprised me. That poor girl. Indeed, how people always say it's not as fun as it looks being too wealthy. But hey, a bit of extra money in your pocket couldn't hurt. I mean, you could use it to pay for your vocal training. And at the same time, you'd help Tracy, so that she can be with her true love. Yeah, becoming a singer had been a lifelong dream of mine. But because of money struggles, I'd had to put that aside. Mom's right. This was my chance. I had to take it. So I called Tracy to seal the deal. She was over the moon about it, and we arranged to meet the next day to start preparing. I thought I'd just have to learn all of her favorite things and maybe borrow some of her clothes so that I didn't get caught out. But no, there was a whole lot more to it than that. For starters, I had to take etiquette classes. Can you even believe? That first day, I had lessons on how to walk properly, They legitimately did put books on my head to improve my posture. And then came the elocution lessons to teach me how to speak more clearly. Seriously, was this Princess Diaries or what? But the best part, though, was her wardrobe. Wow, her outfits were to die for. Now that's what gave me the urge to dive into the royal life now. Everything was going well until we sat down to go through all of her likes and dislikes. Her dislikes were about a mile long. Oh man, Tracy was one fussy girl. I mean, who didn't like pizza? I basically lived off the stuff. Plus, she was vegan, gluten-free, and had a nut allergy. What did she even eat? But despite that, we got through the week. Every morning I had my etiquette classes, which now were easy peasy. I could totally pull it off as a high society girl. And then in the afternoons, I hung with Tracy and learned everything I could about her. By the end of the week, we got all things set and ready for the swap. So Tracy and I went out to celebrate. "Catherine, look at our faces," she said while squinting her eyes. I took a closer look at the phone screen and gotta admit, despite being pretty identical, there were still some differences between us. Sure, her cheekbones were more prominent and her nose was slightly upturned, but with a bit of makeup, I could fix that, right? Tracy wasn't convinced, though. "Listen, I think you're going to need to get plastic surgery." Wait, I wasn't ready for any of that. But on second thought, I guess that would be all right, as it'd only make me prettier, which would totally help with my singing career. So I went under the knife. Not only my nose and cheekbones were fixed, but they also added a birthmark to my shoulder to match the one Tracy had. I looked like an Egyptian mummy with all my bandages on, coming out of the operating room. But when the day came to remove them, I was amazed. Just a little touch-up could make me look this incredible. I twirled around in front of the mirror in one of Tracy's glitzy dresses and just smiled. We were totally going to pull this off. Tracy was even more excited than me. She turned to me and said, "Ready for the family party?" Oh, wow. So my first mission had arrived already. I nervously looked at Tracy, and she just giggled and said, "Oh, don't be nervous. It's just my cousin's baby's first birthday party. No big deal. Although Thomas's whole family will be there. That's the family I'm meant to marry into." Okay, now I was even more worried. Tracy told me to simply do what I learned in the classes. As for Thomas, she instructed me to just ignore him, as that's what she usually did. He was used to the cold shoulder. Well, the moment I arrived at the party, I was already so overwhelmed. I couldn't believe my eyes. Her cousin's house was basically a palace with butlers and a grand staircase as you entered, just like in the movies. I almost had to pinch myself that I was even there. As I walked in, one of the butlers asked me to follow him through to the banquet hall. A banquet hall? How insane! There were crystal chandeliers hanging from every part of the ceiling, and the room looked like it was literally made from gold. I noticed Tracy's dad standing in the middle of the room with a young couple and a baby. That would be Tracy's cousin, and the baby was obviously the reason this insane party had been thrown. I took a deep breath, gathered myself, and walked towards them in the way my etiquette teacher had taught me. I greeted them casually, and it seemed no one sensed anything weird. Not even Tracy's dad. However, I was still afraid someone would realize. So I grabbed a glass of wine and went to stand in the corner just to be safe. While I was fiddling with the glass and trying not to make eye contact with anyone, a guy came up to me and clinked my glass. Oh boy! The coolest, most handsome guy ever was standing there grinning at me. I smiled back at him politely, trying not to blush, and then I realized, wasn't he Thomas and Tracy, the happy couple? Suddenly, I heard Tracy's dad from a few feet away, speaking towards us. "You two look exquisite together. Be good to him now, Tracy, won't you?" Yep, it's Thomas, the fiancé that Tracy doesn't like at all. Okay, so I need to act cold towards him, otherwise I'll ruin everything for Tracy. But heck, he was just so good looking. I quickly walked away towards the dessert table and started stuffing my face with some almond cookies, anything to distract myself from Thomas. As I picked up a third one, I heard Thomas scream, and the next moment he was running over to me shouting, "Tracy, put it down! There are nuts in those!" I dropped the cookie in shock. Right. I was supposed to be allergic to these delicious snacks. Totally forgot that. Gosh, I turned around to see all eyes were on me. This was a disaster. I was like a deer in the headlights. Didn't know what else to do. I pretended to faint. Thomas immediately carried me somewhere while others called the family doctor. I only took a peek when I felt like I was let down on a bed. And wow, even their guest room is gorgeous. Anyway, the doctor did some quick checkup and said I was okay. Well, obviously. Then Thomas rushed over, holding my hand and kept saying, "Thank God you're okay, baby." Really? How come Tracy didn't like him? He was so sweet. He was looking at me so lovingly. Wait, at Tracy, actually. Oh boy, this was getting weird. Guess I have started off this mission on the wrong foot. But having that first incident actually helped me become more careful, so I've been getting better and better at playing Tracy. I was like a secret agent that would be summoned by duty at any sec. Sometimes you'd find me as a princess, other times I'd be waiting tables. My life was getting busier, but much more fun in some senses. Then one day, Tracy suddenly appeared at my door, looking all loved up. How strange it was. Usually she only contacted me over the phone. Then she said, "Kathy, I have a big mission for you." As she sat down, she put a bulging envelope on the table and said, "Kathy, sweetie, I need a big favor this time. So, here's the thing. Me and Arnold are going to Asia for a month, and, I was wondering if you could maybe move into my house and cover for me?" I was shocked. A month? That's quite a long time. I mean, surely I'll get caught. Oh, I'm not sure, Tracy. I tried to avoid her eye contact, but she kept begging and looking like she was about to cry. Oh, God. What should I do? Guys, please give me some advice. And stay tuned. I'll be back with part 2 to tell you how things go down. Why do I have uneasy feelings about all this?